What if I told you that you could quit your job with no plan B, learn skills, and build a business that would generate tens of thousands of dollars in revenue? Well, that's exactly the story of Stephen Campbell, who built TinyAcquisitions. My name's Christian Peverelli, co-founder of WeAreNoCode, and this is Behind the Movement, where we talk to entrepreneurs, investors, and people in the startup ecosystem. In this interview, I talked to Stephen, who was on a quest to get his own liberty and self-reliance and freedom. Now, he quit his job and was able to build TinyAcquisitions from scratch with no technical skills and very little entrepreneurship experience. Now in this episode, we get pretty deep. We talk a lot about no code. We talk about how he got started in the process and the power of these tools, what they've unlocked for him. But we also get into spirituality and the role that it plays within building companies, religion. And of course, we give awesome advice to entrepreneurs looking to build out their companies from scratch. One thing I love about this interview is how he shows that personally, you can completely change your life. And no code tools are just a means to an end. Now, this is a fantastic guest. I'm super excited to put this on for you. And with no further ado, meet this amazing gentleman, Stephen Campbell. What is up, Stephen? How you doing, man?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
I'm super excited to have you here today. I know that you might be a little nervous. There's nothing to be nervous about. We're going to have an awesome conversation. We're going to talk about no code. We're going to talk about your journey. We're going to talk about this crazy new thing of, the fact that individuals can now build out entire companies without tech skills. I'm super stoked. How is it over there in Jamaica?
It's pretty nice, pretty sunny. And I'm just chilling. Right now. It's pretty good.
That's amazing. So this entire meetup and this interview is because I started noticing you on Twitter. I think in parallel, you were also noticing me on LinkedIn. And we were following sort of what each other was doing for a while now. Being a big fan of TinyAcquisitions. Let's start off maybe by just talking about what TinyAcquisitions actually is, and then we'll jump into talking about no code, about your story and all that.
All right. So TinyAcquisitions is a marketplace for a specific type of buyer or seller. I would say it really was built with the seller in mind. It's a marketplace where that seller is more than likely an indie hacker, a dev, a maker, whatever you want to call it. But that characteristic of a person that builds things online, then digital products. And then this buyer is a person who is looking for an opportunity to leverage some small project, and we call them tiny projects. And that was actually, in hindsight, I discovered that term tiny projects was motivated or inspired by another maker called Ben Stokes, right? I follow him. So we call them tiny projects, and that buyer is trying to leverage something that is validated already, something that is proven. It's generating maybe a little money, 100 MR maybe, and it doesn't have to, but it's a concept that they can take and build on it and develop maybe a startup.
I love that.
That's
so it's basically it's all about selling small businesses that are worth roughly $10,000, correct? I'm on the website here, and you can actually go and check out. Well, you have to sign up, and then you can explore some of these tiny projects, and you can get sort of an overview of some of the features, sort of how much the person is selling it for, a little bit more information. So you can see some projects right here. You can also, on the left-hand side, as you see, you have a maximum, minimum sort of price range that you're looking for, and all these are micro projects that people are selling. So that's so cool. It, on one end, kind of inspires people who are non-technical to start building out products, or even people who are technical and put them on this marketplace. But also for people who are like, oh, I don't want to start from scratch. I want to start from a business that already kind of is working and just needs to be taken to the next level. This is super cool. So this is obviously going to lead me to my next question. You have been, tell me your story of being someone who didn't really know about this thing called no code to being able to, without any technical skills, and then jumping in and sort of learning these things and building TinyAcquisition. What was the process for you?
So I'm probably going to give a little bit more than I give in the other interviews, because I've kind of been saying the same thing. So it's about August 2020, and I just sent in my resignation for an online job that I was doing for about 8 months, right? I was working at a domain name registrar. The reason why I left was because it was taking too much time in the days. So I was working from home, I was flexible, but I still wanted more time. And I thought that I was at a place where I wanted to let out my creativity a bit more. I was like, what can I do? I had skills in WordPress. I knew domain names. I had experience working escrow um, with buyers and sellers of domain names. And I just kind of started thinking, searching on Twitter. And I saw on Twitter where someone was selling a no code related domain name. I was like, what is no code? Because it
Through
was it
the
was kind of
domain name. It's
trendy.
so cool. That's how you found out about no code.
Right. So I was like, what's no code? And I just went to Google, did a quick research. I was like, this thing is blowing up. And I just searched the hashtag and saw that a lot of persons were talking about no code. So I got a no code domain name, nocodemakers.com, because I realized these guys call themselves makers. So maybe this was my kind of entry into the community. Set up a Twitter account, did no code makers, and did a WordPress site. It would have been like a no code forum where persons would come and talk about their experiences with no code using different tools. And that was how I kind of found no code and got into the community.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really powerful. And then from there, I mean, you've built several projects already. How did the idea for Tiny
Yeah.
Acquisitions really come to you? And yeah, and then like, where do you see this going right now?
Yeah. So it was about May. In May of this year, 2021, and I was in the middle of a boot camp
Hmm.
with AirDev, right? I, did virtual ghostwriter, and it was doing, about 170 MRR on Stripe, and I had some customers on PayPal as well, so maybe about 200 MRR. And I was saying, I need to improve my bubble skills, so I went to the AirDev bootcamp. But I was thinking, what next? How can I leverage this skill and do something next? And I was thinking that I needed to get an exit from Virtual Ghostwriter first. So I went onto MicroAcquire, listed Virtual Ghostwriter, and within a couple hours, I had a number of buyers reaching out. And over the next couple of days, up to 60, you know, and it wasn't working out. The conversations were very shallow, and I was thinking that my time was being wasted. So before posting on MicroAcquire, I had asked a question on Twitter. You know, what do you think about tiny exits? What do you call a tiny exit? Is $2,500 a tiny exit? That's US. What would you be happy with taking, a small app and selling it for? And it kind of generated some, feedback, some negative, some positive. And in that time also, as I mentioned before, I did the experiment with MicroAcquire, and I saw that there was something lacking. There was, something that didn't appeal to the maker, this type of person that did small projects and just got bored and needed exits, you know, or it wasn't making enough money and they wanted to start something new. So I said, why not, you know, build a platform, a marketplace? And this was a huge challenge for me because if you mention two-sided marketplaces, I wouldn't, go near that thing because it was so time consuming and technical. But I took on the challenge, and during the boot camp, I started building it out. And I said I was not going to put in more than 4 weeks to get this platform live and functional. And if it didn't take off, I
Hmm.
wouldn't bother with it. So that's how I started Tiny
That's amazing.
Acquisitions.
And I love that where you really set yourself like a time goal. You're like, hey, this is what I'm giving myself for this specific project. And I love there's this saying where it's like, things take the time that you give them. Like, and that to a certain extent, of course, is
Yeah.
not true, where like, yeah, you can't build a house in 2 days. But like if the goal is unless you set those kind of goals, like it's difficult to fulfill them, right? No, and I think honestly, it's like such a
Hmm.
cool new thing that's happening right now where it's like people realizing on one end, like exactly what you've said, like you had a problem, you went out there to try to solve it. The solutions were not to your liking for the position you were in. And guess what? When that happens, it's like there's usually going to be a number of people in your same situation going through the same thing with the same sort of needs. And you built for yourself first. This is like the classic way of coming up with amazing like startup ideas. And so tell us a bit, where are you at right now with Tiny Acquisitions? How many users? Like, are you generating revenue? How many transactions have happened? Have any purchases happened already?
So we have we just crossed around 2,500 users. We have generated, 5 figures in revenue, and it's
You don't
growing.
have to.
I won't say the number because you know business. And we have quite a number of deals, over a dozen deals happening that I know of, right? Because as the administrator of the site, I build a site, I know what's happening. So sometimes you'll see projects, become deactivated and they're actually sold, but it's not reported. So I see a lot of that, and I know that a lot of deals are happening, and maybe persons want to keep
Hmm.
that information private. So I would say we have done quite a number of deals since we started in June. Persons have gone exits, some have shared publicly, and I started calculating the volume of deals that we did, and about 3 months ago, we did $25,000 in volume, and I stopped counting after that. And there has been quite a number of four-figure deals since then, over $5,000 as well, and we have helped makers from various countries. I know of India, Canada, you know, the US, you know, Europe as well, some countries in Europe as well, get exits on Tiny
Love that.
Acquisitions.
No, it's a super cool platform. So for anyone who wants to check it out, it's TinyAcquisitions with an S. .com. You can go check it out. You can sign up for free. You can check out some of the deals going on there. And if you want to purchase as well, you can contact those companies through the platform as well. Really cool platform. And this kind of leads me to the next question for you. Like, you talk about this transition from sort of a 9 to 5 job, not having enough time, and being like, you know what, I want more freedom of time, and kind of jumping into entrepreneurship. Now, obviously in the news, we only see the rosy headlines of people buying or raising hundreds of millions of dollars. Or tell me a little bit about your entrepreneurship journey. What were some of the difficult parts of it? What were some of the good parts? And like from your perspective now, and of course you're only still at the very early stages in your journey. Like, what would be some things that you think individuals should know before getting into this transition? Because I think a lot of people are looking for this right now.
Yeah, I can get very real. I mean, there are things that I haven't said because I know persons wouldn't be able to handle it. And generally, persons have different backgrounds, and I try not to put stuff that would, topple people over. But, entrepreneurship has been very challenging for me. I remember leaving my job with about a year, uh,
Runway.
run
Yeah.
a year of runway in between. And that year came and it went, and there was no income. And what is funny is that my wife, she also left her job in that time because both of us were kind of burnt out, and she thought an opportunity would have come up in that time, and it didn't. So we were both at home trying to figure out, you know, how this entrepreneurship thing would have gone. And we started an e-commerce store which absolutely failed, not a dime in revenue, and we invested in it from the savings as well. And it came to a point after the year that the savings went to zero. I had $0 in my account. Both of us had zero. And I mean, the bill collectors were starting to send us notifications now. And in that time, I started to look for opportunities even more than just entrepreneurship. I was thinking, hey, maybe I should try to get something stable again. So I started reaching out to CEOs, and that's how I got the job at the domain name registrar, right? So that kind of helped us for 8 months until I was like, no, I need to level up, right? And that's how I got into no code. So that journey into no code, into into my entrepreneurship journey as well, was kind of the catalyst. So I would say no code was the catalyst, that point where everything kind of changed and my mentality changed, because having experienced that 1 year of struggle and nothing, there was nothing that you could do that was worse than that. There was there was nothing for me to lose in trying no code, because I basically lost everything. You know, um, I sold my car. A lot of things, and there was just nothing for me to lose. So when I went online to share my journey, to share my experiences, I just had no reservation, really, because I had experienced what it was to have nothing. And that kind of resonated with a lot of persons. And the drive in that time to also learn was
Hmm.
motivated by lack as well. So if the more comfortable I was, the less likely I would have been to get in the hours, put in those 16 hours every day, 6 days a week, putting in 16 hours, waking up, realizing that I fell asleep and going again. That was really
This is very
surreal
real
and
where you're
real for
going, and
us.
it's this fact, and this is something that I have a kind of like very different story, um, slightly similar, where like like I've both sold companies and exited, and also failed companies, and have to tell people, hey, like like this didn't work out, and it's a terrible feeling. But I think there's something about doing that having that range of emotion, where it's like being at rock bottom and knowing that
Yeah,
things can only get better, and it's like then it's really about putting in the
yeah,
effort, having successes that allow you and your confidence to be strong enough to withstand those difficult moments. And but I think that's really where, and it's the reason why I say that entrepreneurship is both a test of yourself personally as it is a test of you professionally, because it really brings you to the depth of those emotions and they're intertwined. Um, but man, I mean, it's that
right.
these are the kind of stories I think that we have to be talking about more when we talk about jumping into building businesses,
Yeah,
online businesses. Like it's we need to get more people understanding that like, hey, it is difficult to build a business. Now, the awesome thing and potentially one thing you might have done
it
differently is like, hey, you don't have to quit your job to get started, right? To start building things, to learn the skills, to upskill. That's something that I always encourage people. I'm like, listen, it's a transition, like leaving your job, and I've seen this happen from people leaving Morgan Stanley, like really top, like winning hundreds of thousands of dollars. And guess what? The people who waste the most money in entrepreneurship are usually people who have the most money. And guess what? They also have rich friends. So then, investments coming in left and right, and they're just spending and spend. And so I think that what you talk about is important for us to start bringing up in this society, right? It isn't all wins. It does require sacrifice. It takes hard work. It's not going
yeah,
to be easy every day.
yeah,
But the fact that there are avenues you can take that are
yeah,
smarter than others, right? Like leveraging no code tools to begin with, instead of going and maybe hiring a whole team of developers to see if your idea will succeed or not. Um, so, I mean, it's
right.
super inspiring what you're talking about. I think that this is the kind of story we have to be talking about a little bit more, the difficult times as well as the great times.
Yeah, have to mention this as well. You know, a supportive wife, I would say, was very, very important. I mean, she also took like uh small gigs in that time. You know, we both were taking small gigs, and she was doing a lot of freelancing as well. And she kind of just believed that eventually it would have worked out. And in that time, we grew spiritually, and we had such a gratitude. I mean, I would wake up in the morning and just be thankful that I had running water, you know, and that was the motivation to get up and do things. And as you mentioned, you don't have to leave your job. I mean, that's my story, and I left my job, and I try not to put my story on everybody by saying, "Hey, you should do." You know, I am sharing my story. If it brings you inspiration and you are in a similar situation,
100%.
you can draw inspiration from that story. But your journey will be
Yeah.
different,
And I love
you know,
that. But I also
guaranteed.
love the fact that you're talking from a very humble place. Like you're not coming from like massive means. You're in a place that a lot of people would be like, that's relatively remote, Jamaica. It's not like you're living in Paris, Tokyo, or like New York or whatever. And that's what I think makes the story even stronger. It's the fact that like, hey, this is like a real thing, and it's not just happening to, to rich kids in California or to, it's also happening. And I think like because that's the narrative, right? Like every company's built in Silicon Valley. And it's like, well, no, and no longer is that the case, and actually there's this huge shift happening to this world where you can build out your startups with relatively frugal means. But I think that what you're talking about is like, and the support of your wife. My God, like what would I do if my wife was not supportive of my entrepreneurship? Because people can see us in these, the flashy side of entrepreneurship, but we both know that entrepreneurship is not always flashy. That having to, and I'm sure the experience of like, having to have people coming in to collect money for the like basic utilities is not a good feeling. It's feelings that put you on a real, like
Right,
under pressure personally, right? But I think that those are the times that really
right,
develop you into becoming a better entrepreneur, because as soon as you realize like, hey, like look at what happened, I'm still here, like yeah, stuff got crazy for a bit, but as soon as you invest in that, now you're really well positioned to pretty much take advantage of any opportunity that comes your way in 1 year. That's insane.
exactly.
That's crazy. When it takes 5 years to learn how to code well, for example, like that's like unheard of. And so I think that in a world where right now everyone's trying to get away from their 9 to 5, everyone's kind of miserable. I say everyone, of course, there are plenty of people very happy, right? And I'm not saying entrepreneurship's for everyone, but I'm saying that there now is a
Yeah,
path for people who are looking for more freedom that is not an easy path, but is the path that we can invest time into gradually and make a transition into building the things that we actually believe in, right? Like creating those dreams and taking responsibility for those dreams as well. Because sitting around and doing nothing and just daydreaming about it is also
exactly.
not a good solution. And as you, yeah.
If,
Exactly. Yeah.
if you
No, I
don't
mean,
work at it,
your
it'll
story
never
is super
happen.
inspiring to me. And like, honestly, like I from the beginning of this journey in no code myself, like I only came into no code because it was the best way to build companies. I realized that by, building my own companies and then helping hundreds of other founders build theirs. You come in it from a different perspective. And I think that the more we start carving out these paths, and as you say, like there are parts of your story that people will associate themselves to and connect with. There are other parts that they can't because they come from different backgrounds, or they live in a different culture. But I think the more that we pave that ground and show that there are
Right.
several opportunities, like I think that's a really powerful thing, and I think that it's gonna level up happiness ultimately.
Yeah. I think that's what no code does. No code kind of leverages well, it democratizes tech, and it kind of levels the playing field, because I was starkly aware that my background was different from everyone else that was on Twitter. I knew my lane. I stayed in my lane. I knew my background. I knew what I was. doing, basically, because persons would share stuff and you get FOMO. You would kind of feel like, hey, am I supposed to be doing this? Should I be supporting this other person's no code project? Should I be buying this subscription? Should I be taking this here? And I was starkly aware that my journey is just my journey, and that persons couldn't see what I was going through, and I couldn't see what persons were going through, because what we do on social media and what we say is just a glimpse into what's really happening. So we paint a narrative that we want persons to see,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
the
I love
reality
that.
could be much different. And so that, yeah, that kind of showed me that I had to get my act
Yeah.
together
And
and know
but
what
I
I was
think that's
doing.
completely true.
You
And it's
know,
like until we start integrating some of these real things that are happening behind the scenes into and being really transparent. And that's why I think building in public is kind of a really cool thing. It's because it gives other people like a feel of like some of this stuff. Now, I agree with you. People are just only giving you the highlights, all the stuff that's going great. And I think we need to develop a culture in entrepreneurship where we're talking about the hard things. Why? Because when you get vulnerable, you let go of a bunch of stuff. You
yeah,
know, like when, for example, when you fail a company, then you realize
yeah,
like that you didn't die and that actually the sky is the limit, and it unleashes this new level of what you're able to do because you're not scared anymore, right? Because that monster you created in your head is not the monster that it really is,
right,
right? But the same thing with like, you know, only showing off the good stuff. It's the same reason why I tell people when I'm teaching them in my community, like, hey, behind these curtains, take off the pitch hat. Like, you know, yeah, we'll train you and help you to know how to pitch, but it's all about like get vulnerable. Why? Because we spend the rest of our time acting like we're the best of the best in front of everyone else. So if we don't have also an environment in which we can actually share the difficult moments, and that's what I think a lot of this business world is going right now. Well, then actually we're stopping ourselves from growing and improving. It's like no one can help you for the thing you never
right, right,
expressed that you had an issue with, right? Like no one will help you if you don't ask. And all these things, like
exactly,
they're counterintuitive to just the way that
yeah,
society has been structured. But I think it's like, hey, you know, like everything looks shiny on the top. And that's the reason. And what you mentioned is actually a huge thing. FOMO, envy. That feeling of envy is something that
yeah,
one thing that I've realized
yeah,
lately is like
yeah,
you can feed that envy and continue going into like social media. You need to really keep yourself in check with the way that you, the content you watch and where you're interacting and how it's making you feel. If you spend an hour and a half, 2 hours on Twitter and it makes you miserable and feel
yeah,
full of envy towards other people, maybe it's time to reconsider that time. Or maybe it's time to put out more content versus like going through the stream more often. So I think it all kind of,
right.
yeah. And I
I
think that even for
agree
me,
with
like
you.
I
I
get caught
totally
up in
agree with
like
you on that.
looking
I,
at things that don't make me always feel amazing. But it's like the moment you feel you're conscient that
yeah,
like, oh, this is what's happening, that's why this always makes me feel like that, you start disconnect like you start connecting the patterns, and then you can backward engineer it to create something that is a healthier way of living your life for you.
and here about entrepreneurship as well. A lot of persons come into entrepreneurship because their jobs didn't give them the time or the money wasn't good enough. And sometimes entrepreneurship robs so much more time and requires so much more sacrifice because it's so risky. You can lose so much more money. Actually,
Hmm.
being stable is the safer way to go, you know. But it's just that with entrepreneurship, it rewards you as time goes on. And my one of my main goals is freedom. So I'm not going to come into entrepreneurship to have less time. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go from working 8 hours to consistently working 16 hours. I'm not. There are some days that I get up and what I'm realizing is like on a Monday, and I work for 3 hours and I fall asleep for the rest of the day. or I'm just there lying down thinking and dreaming about other ideas. And that is really what I wanted to do, and that's what I need, because a part of building things online as well, if you're a true maker, is to get ideas and to work out how they are practical. I call it dreaming, and I hadn't started daydreaming about stuff until I was older. I didn't used to. I never dreamt about stuff like this before. I was in school, I was doing well, I was getting the best grades, but now I need more time to think about the thing that I'm doing, and not just be completely always engaged, commenting and replying to everybody, that I
I think
can't
a lot
think
of people
about
can
where the
really
business is
relate to that
headed
because we're kind
or
of
what
in
I'm
like a
actually
rat
doing.
race world, right? It's
You
like
know?
it's like go 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 go. You should always be doing something, and that kind of is really counterintuitive to the way that we were created, also physically, right? Like we weren't made to sit in front of a computer for hours, feeling stress and like just accomplishing a bunch of tasks. There needs to be a middle ground. We need to be able to feed, uh, you know, essentially the side of us that is just like a body of an animal that was created thousands of years ago and we need to like feed that, and we also need to like keep up with the modern
Mhm.
world and all the movement that's happening, the fact that everything's moving online. But I love that, it's kind of like work-life balance, right? And I think that a lot of people spend many hours sat in front of their computer, but I think that they could actually take away 20% of that time doing things that they're enjoying and be more productive during that 80% of the time that they're working. And if you don't do that, it creates an imbalance that, for me at least, does not work, right? Like, and so it's also like, hey, guess what? Like, you're only
Yeah, yeah,
working so that you can continue living the life that you're living or improve that life. So if you've not crafted a life that you love living, you're working for nothing. And so all of that has to be considered when you're crafting your life. And what I
right,
love about what you're saying is like, I want freedom. Freedom is
right,
crafting your own life, right? And of course, there's a part of that that's professional. I would also argue that finding the right soulmate for you is something that is, at least for me, it was a 30 years search, until, yeah, like, and I was and I knew that that was going to be a priority for me in my life
wow,
because that's something that I value tremendously. And yeah, and I've advanced in very well there, like in that on that front. Sometimes you're going to sacrifice advancing in one area over another, but it's like it's all about what are the different pillars that you need to craft the life that you want, right? And I think once you figure out what those pillars are, yeah,
right.
then it becomes a lot very powerful. Yeah, I hear you fine
I
because
think your
it's
camera
recording
went out.
natively.
You
So
hearing me properly?
you it might cut off a little bit, but you'll still be able to like the recording will still come out good.
Okay, I
Yeah, no
stopped seeing
problem.
your camera altogether. It's
So
a black
cool. So
screen,
now
but
let's talk a little
let's
bit
continue.
about.
It's fine.
So first of all, where do you see the no code movement going? Like, where do you see this whole thing going?
I think the no code movement uh, is at the very top. It is peaking, and I seeing it become commonplace eventually. It's just going to be the way you go about starting an online business. You will just automatically start with a no code tool, and it would be, something that is not worth mentioning. It becomes a part of the everyday, you know, journey in starting an online business because it's so right.
Yeah,
It's so right for doing tech in this era that we're living in, because who wants to be investing $100,000 over the next how many months, just trying to validate an idea that's just not making sense anymore? The quicker you can do it and the cheaper you can do it and get that idea validated, it's just going to be commonplace in my view.
yeah. It's super interesting perspective. I share that to a certain extent. I also think that I actually think it's not at all the peak. I think it's like the begin, like we're like in the first inning. I think that like it's the peak for people who are, you know, in highly educated capitals and in certain pockets in Twitter and certain pockets online. And I think
Uh,
like, but I think that when I talk to the average person, um, you know, probably at least 90% of people have no idea what I'm talking about when I talk about no code. So I think that there's maybe it's just the fact that we're all living within our own sort of bubbles, right?
Bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I may be in that bubble.
Well, I mean, I think you might just be in it just because of being in Twitter, right? But I mean, I just don't see that this is a mainstream thing yet. It's like we don't see many people talking about it. I mean, obviously, there's like articles coming out about it, and we're hyper aware when we're in the center of it. But a lot of people don't really understand what this movement means and how it really affects them. So I also love what you said, right? You're like, well, you know, if the goal is to build a company, you should be doing that really lean, and no code tools are super well fit for that. I also think like, hey, every single person is going to have to start picking up these tools and learning how they're going to affect their job, their industry, you know, and whether you're a business owner having to reinvent and kind of digitalize your company, or you are a secretary who needs to figure out how to automate certain tasks because guess what? Like a lot of what certain people are doing these days is relatively
Yeah,
repetitive. So I think it's more about like the next phase after people knowing about no code is about being able to apply it to specific end goals and then to have support systems around those end goals so that individuals can reach those goals. And the more, you know, and I think the goal is to upskill, the goal is to, like, that's what people's goals should be. Now, the end goals will
yeah,
be I want to build a company, or I want to do less repetitive tasks at work, or I want to set up my company for the digital era, or I want to empower my entire non-technical people to be able to do a certain number of things that do require technical things, and I don't have to, you know, have those people go towards the IT department, which is already flooded with things they have to work on.
yeah. And I think it's a huge lever also for persons interested in tech with a non-technical background in developing countries as well,
Hmm.
uh, who are basically blindsided by the fact that they live in this, you know, environment where that's just not the norm. That's not the way you approach business. That's not how you go about starting a tech company. But these tools can be leveraged so that it would be as if location doesn't
Hmm.
exist, no? Because that's really what no code does as well.
I love that, and I love that your end goal is freedom as well, because I think that's what a lot of people are craving right now, in kind of the
Yeah.
wake of this corporate dream, which is not played out in the same way that it did for the sort of baby boomers, right, where there was a lot of
Yeah.
opportunity, like it's a
And
different
I think
environment.
somewhat I have achieved that freedom, you know, because I'm in a spot now where I have to be challenging myself to write goals and do these other things because I'm very comfortable. I'm extremely comfortable because, and why I say I'm extremely comfortable is not because I have material stuff. I mean, the level of ownership that I have now is so low in the physical world. I would say I have a lot of assets online, but the reason why I'm comfortable is that I have so much time on my hands. And that is what I value the most. So if I am going to move forward and continue to grow, it has to be with the thought process that I will keep my time. So I have a lot of persons reaching out to me for jobs, and I'm saying no to every single one of them because I don't want you to steal any more of my time. I want my time to do what I want to do with my time. So it's kind of a balancing act for me to say how can I grow as a person, you know, in my business whilst maintaining my time. And you know, persons would argue that that's not possible. Well, I am willing to take a risk and say that that's what I'm going after, and I'm going to try to ensure that I take the right decisions to get there.
I love it.
Yeah.
Wise words of wisdom from, and I'm going to say this, the leading no code expert in Jamaica. Isn't it crazy?
Perhaps.
You literally are. Why? Because right now, not a lot of people are leveraging these things. So it's a massive competitive advantage. And that's what I encourage people to view this as. It's like, hey, do you wish you had learned how to code when the first internet companies were built? I know a lot of people have that feeling. Others probably not. Now, with no code, it's not even asking that, because it's about like, hey, are you willing to put in 6 months, 1 year of your time to learn skills that'll be useful for the rest of your life?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's
Yeah.
simply a shift that's happening. So I love those words of wisdom. Do you have any recommendations for sort of people who are considering doing the same jump as you did? They're in a 9 to 5. They might not be happy. What would be pieces of advice you might give to a person in that situation right now who has dreams of something bigger? Yeah, what would you tell them?
I would say you start to pursue purpose first. Why ask these questions? Why was I created? Who am I? You know, where do I fall into the grand scheme of things? Because I'm a believer in Christ, right? And in that journey, I kind of think about why I was created, you know. Not everybody is religious, and I'm not expecting that everybody will be on the same journey that I am on, but I believe that everybody was created for a purpose. Now, if you are seeing stuff online and you're being influenced by it, it could be envy, it could be FOMO, and you're leaving a very comfortable place or a place where you are actually supposed to be at, but you're uncomfortable because you see others. It's not good to make a jump based on that fact. So, in my experience, I took a year to think it through, and I could give you 100 reasons why I left my job. I had to think about why I was leaving, because I could have stayed and I would have done well. I know I would have done well. But there were other factors outside of, the time, the, you know, the work environment, the poor culture, and those things. But it's more of an internal thing to say there's more to life than just giving up this time. I could be doing more. And Tiny Acquisitions is proof of that, because Tiny Acquisitions would never have been created if I never made that leap. So the first step I would say is purpose, and um, try to get some quiet time. I mean, we are in a world where there are a lot of distractions. You can be engaged for every waking moment. Whether it's Netflix, whether it's Spotify, Twitter, you can be literally engaged for every second of the day. So get some quiet time. I took a week to just think about where I was and what I was doing, and things got clearer in that time. And maybe the third thing I would say is think about how much time you have. Every day I get up, I think about how much time I have left on earth. And the the question I always ask myself, at what age will you die? And I don't have the answer. So the fact that I don't have that answer, it means that every single day that I wake up, I'm just grateful that I can go out and do meaningful things. So if I'm finding myself doing something that is not meaningful, I'm literally wasting time. So somebody might be in a job and you have thought things through and you just realize that, hey, my time is being wasted. I need to make a decision. You might be at the place where you need to get a plan, an exit strategy as to how you will do that, considering your finances, considering your welfare. You have to eat food. You have to eat food. You have to pay the rent. How are you going to do that? So those are things to be
I love it.
considered. And, and just enjoy the planet that we have been given. Enjoy
Wow,
life,
I love
Yeah.
this. I love this because that's not the classic kind of answers that people are giving. And I think that we have to incorporate more humanism in our business life as well. We have to understand that we are,
Yeah.
all encompassing beings, and work is a part of us and what we accomplish is a part of us. Being good physically and mentally is another part of us. Running a good relationship with potentially a spouse, a husband, and friends and family is another important part. And I think that the way that what I'm hearing is that there are all these pillars that we have to attend to, and to not ignore any one of them. Really powerful stuff. Again, I think that your story is amazing. I think regardless of whether people are religious, and even those who have different religions, they can absolutely connect to the fact that we have bigger purpose. Some other people don't consider themselves religious; they consider themselves spiritual. Also, I think a lot of this is similar, where people just have this feeling that like, yes, there is. I have a role that I either believe is already figured out for me, but I'm still going to have to go down that road. I'm still going to have to accomplish those things, and I'm still going to have to take responsibility for my own life. So I totally love what you're saying here. Thanks so much for joining. Before we leave, where can people find you?
So I guess on Twitter, I'm on Twitter, at STEPO Campbell _. That's at Stepper Campbell. On LinkedIn, Stephen Campbell. And if persons want to send me an email, they can send me at Stephen at
Very cool.
tinyacquisitions.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now, before we head out, I have a last and very loaded question, which is, what do you see? We talked about this, and you kind of talked about your religion. What do you see the purpose of what you've been, I guess, sent here for? If that's the way you put it, like, what is your purpose?
Well, I think what I have seen so far is that I don't know, and that's fine. I don't have to know everything now, but based on what I found out so far, just thinking about from childhood till now, is always that I have been set up as an example, and I think I have to live out being an example in everywhere that I see myself. I have to just be an example. So in no code, I'm that guy who is the example of how to go about no code given these particular conditions. I think that um I've been given a mind that kind of challenges a lot of things, and it would get me in trouble a lot. But I've learned to accept the mind that I've been given. I'm able to think about and process things in such a way that it's so against the tide. But what I believe that is for is to show others that there is another way. There's not one particular path to go about living a fulfilled life. So I think that's one of my main purposes, is to just be an example. Leadership, yes, but through example. My own life being the
I love that,
example.
and that's super powerful. And I think anyone who's watched today can sort of give you that you are, that you're really being portrayed. And I think that's the reason why I want to have you on this interview as well, is because I think that you're standing for something that is really powerful, and you're showing that through example. Right? It's easy to say things; it's more difficult to lead things by doing them yourself. And I think that your story is one that's going to continue to inspire people, and in a world where we're increasingly going towards digitalization. So I really appreciate also the fact that you sort of combine this idea of living a good life with developing yourself as a professional. And I think that as humans, we have to not lose track of these big, important things in our life. And so everyone can give different importance to them. But yeah, well, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. We will be posting this very shortly. And again, thank you so much. Enjoy your journey. And you have a friend out of me, that's for sure. So
Thank you very much. We should talk a whole lot more. I mean, we were talking a whole lot
yeah,
before we
absolutely.
started recording.
So thank you everyone who's
Evident.
watching, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Follow this man. He is amazing. And I'll see you next time. As usual, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And if you want more content to learn how to build your startup as a non-technical entrepreneur, or if you want to hear awesome stories of entrepreneurs who have built impressive businesses, or investors and how they think about entrepreneurship, then follow this channel, share it with a friend, and best luck on your startup journey. Take care.